My name is Lloyd Russell-Moore. I'm the Labour and Cooperative Party's Member of Parliament that covers Kemp Town and Peacehaven, so everything from the pier all the way to Peacehaven and then up to Morscombe and Whitehawk. One of the things that we've been focusing on, and I'm sure Peter will talk a bit about this, is the request that you gave us last time on the recycling rates in the city. Peter organised with his office and I went along a meeting where we went to a deep dive. We went to every single one of the recycling plants that the city uses and the waste plants. We went to up to into Wilden and to Newhaven where our waste gets sent. And I think that was an extremely useful meeting, and that was just because of the request that you had given us. And it will lead to a review on the recycling rates of aluminium in the city. The council is going to look at that to see whether foils can now be included, because there might be a market to that. And it will lead also to a wider review. The problem is the government has said that they're going to come forward with some money and some requirements on recycling and waste. And surprise, surprise, they haven't. They've been messing around with their internal leadership elections and who's the next prime minister. And they've been doing that for almost a year now, haven't they? So it's all ready to go, but the city can't do anything until the government publishes it. So I've put some questions down asking why the government hasn't published those guidelines and requirements for councils, because that's what's needed before the council's allowed to do anything.
I'm Peter Kyle. I'm the Member of Parliament for Hove and Portslade. Just to introduce here, I have Jasmine, who's sitting next to me, who is doing an internship with me for a full year from Leeds University. So look, I'm going to be very quick because I might not even use the 2 minutes. Everything Lloyd just said about the waste recycling is important, and we've done a lot of time invested in that. But just also to introduce Caroline onto that, because she was very, very much involved in that piece of work that led up to it as well. We met the three of us have been involved up there in Parliament meeting several times since then. Then the visits happened. Caroline couldn't join us on the day of the visits, but did the same visits a couple of days after we did with Veolia. I think we're going to go into more detail about that.
So as Peter and Lloyd have said, this is a massive priority right across the different parties and everyone in the city, I think. And I've been working on this since 2018 when I first went and visited the plant at Hollingdean and asked them how much it would cost to be able to make sure that we could recycle pots, tubs and trays. At that point, they were saying £1 million. I went to the Environment Secretary at the time, Michael Gove, to say, what are you going to do? Because the council doesn't have £1 million down the back of the sofa. And he was actually receptive to some conversations, but lots has happened since then. First of all, he's been reshuffled. And then, as Lloyd said, we've had this new Environment Act. Under that act, by the end of this month, the government is supposed to have come up with targets to say precisely what recycling the different councils are required to produce. And as the officers were explaining yesterday, there's no point in them putting a lot of money into renovating the materials recycling facility in the city to do pots, tubs and trays if suddenly they're also going to be required to do a whole range of other things too. So it's massively important we get that information from government to let us know exactly what they are going to require. And crucially, the funding is really important too, not just to be able to upgrade some of the facilities. Hopefully Veolia, who make vast profits, will be able to put some of their own money into that. But it was pointed out yesterday that collecting pots, tubs and trays actually isn't commercially viable right now because there isn't a market for them. And therefore the council are making a loss on that. That kind of speaks to the need for a wider policy approach here, because if we had a policy like the Green Party does to require producers to use more recycled goods in new products, you would then get a virtuous circle of having the market for the recycled products that we're producing. But until you have that market, then it is the irony that actually councils will be at a loss for collecting some of these goods. So I'm sure we're going to be keeping the pressure on. Lloyd, as you heard, has already been putting down parliamentary questions to keep the pressure on the government to come up with the information councils need. But then the second part of that will be very much around the finance that is needed as well.
But in short, the three of us MPs have been doing a lot of work on this and have got to, along with the local council. I've got to say, nothing we do seeks to undermine or pretend that we can solve the problems on behalf of the council. The council is in the driving seat of the challenges with recycling and have done enormous amounts of work on it. They've been very generous with their time with the three of us as well. But the two challenges are first that there is no, as Caroline said earlier, there is no market for some of the recycling that needs to be done, like the trays. at the moment. So, so I want to learn more about Caroline's suggestion there about the green policy of, compelling certain use of recycling goods in packaging in the first place. But the second challenge is that the piece of legislation that the government has had the Environment Act has got a very is having a very perverse impact on local authorities, because the legislation will stipulate the recycling requirements for each local authority, but they haven't announced what those priorities are, which means they are going to decide which products must be recycled by local authorities, and that includes food waste and composting as well. And then secondly, they're releasing funds to support local authorities in the priorities that they announce. So in other words, if our local authority then started investing money into retooling so you could do certain types of recycling, and then 5-6 months later, the government finally releases its own priorities, which they will fund. If we're funding the wrong things, suddenly all of the funding will fall through the roof, will fall through the floor, and be cancelled. So we could be investing in the wrong areas. So we've got to wait until the government announce. Now, they should have announced it this month, and they've just delayed it to the spring. So all the time, the government aren't announcing their regulatory requirements and their supporting priorities. We can't do it locally.